We'll just wait for maybe a minute or two, and then we will start.
So the structure is we are all invited to make an opening statement, and after that we'll get into Q&A, is it?
Yeah, so I would request each one of you, after giving my opening remarks, setting the context, I would request each one of you to share your perspective as to what's happening in your specific country or the region or company, and then we will get on to some questions.
Okay.
That sounds okay, I'm sure?
Yep.
Thank you. We will wait for a minute, maybe. Let me just check if everyone, it's already 12 o'clock. One sec.
No, I did that too.
It's already 12 o'clock. I'm just asking Secretariat, should we start? Everyone has joined. Raki, if you could hear me, should we start now?
Yes, sir. We can start. I think I just got locked out for a second. Yeah.
No worries.
Once again, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome you to the Indo-ASEAN Business Summit. We are now beginning our new session. It's a special plenary, India-ASEAN Creating Partnerships for Energy Security. We have a very eminent panel parts of the ASEAN countries. May I request Mr. Sameer Gupta, Chairman CI National Committee on RE Manufacturing and Chairman Jakson India, to kindly moderate this session. Over to you, sir.
Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. This is indeed a very important session which is focusing on energy security, which aims to explore partnerships and, of course, areas of cooperation in energy sector between India and ASEAN countries. There is a 5-year roadmap starting from this year 2021 till 2025, which is the ASEAN Plan of Action on Energy Cooperation, Phase 2, which envisions to achieve energy security, accessibility, affordability, and sustainability for the countries which are in this region. Of course, as we all know, renewable energy has a huge role to play in meeting this objective. Today's platform provides opportunities to share policies, programs, technologies, financing options, capacity building tools for faster adoption of renewable energy in ASEAN region. India has certainly made rapid strides in the renewable energy arena and has emerged as one of the leading nations in promoting green energy in the world. As part of the Paris Accord on climate change, India has made a pledge that by 2030, 40% of India's installed power generation capacity shall be from non-fossil fuel. Accordingly, India is making all efforts to achieve 175 gigawatt installed renewable energy capacity by 2022 and 450 gigawatt capacity by 2030. As per estimates, India needs investment of $500 billion in renewable energy by 2030. This includes capital cost of adding new generation capacity and, of course, modernizing grid transmission and distribution systems. I'm happy to share that just about a month back, India celebrated achievement of crossing 100 gigawatt of installed capacity of renewable energy. And this 100 gigawatt of renewable is without hydro, and this indicates that we are pretty much on track for achieving our ambitious renewable energy target. And with advent of green hydrogen and investment indications which are coming in, it is pretty convincing to us that by 2030, we will exceed the target of 450 gigawatt of renewable energy. India today is the 4th in the world in terms of installed renewable energy capacity. We have successfully attracted an investment of $70 billion in renewable energy sector over last 7 years. In order to fast track investment and facilitate speedy development of renewable energy, Government of India has come out with several encouraging policy initiatives, which includes 100% FDI in renewable energy sector through automatic route, setting up of a renewable energy investment promotion board, setting up a facilitation board to provide one-stop assistance to investors, signing of long-term private term power purchase agreements, transparent bidding system, and promotion of open access policy. Government has also introduced production link incentives to promote renewable equipment manufacturing in India. In parallel, government is also targeting use of 20% blending of ethanol with the fuel by 2025. Further, a waste to energy program for recovery of energy from urban, industrial, and agricultural waste in form of biogas is also under implementation. There is a plan to set up 5,000 such biogas plants by 2023-24. It is heartening that ASEAN region aims to undertake international leadership on promoting sustainability development goal number 7, which is to provide affordable, reliable, and modern energy to all. The focus under this goal is on renewable energy, energy efficiency, clean energy, and of course, innovating new technologies in this field. This will not only fast track adoption of green energy, but also create huge jobs and strengthen cooperation in addressing global challenges such as climate change and sustainable development. The journey of replacing fossil fuels with green energy is moving at a potent speed. This shift is happening faster and in a more comprehensive way than anyone expected. I think the coronavirus pandemic has further accelerated the trend. And by the way, today almost 75% of the world has got a decarbonized horizon, which was only 25% prior to pandemic. Net zero goals, which was once looked impossible, now seems to be inevitable. The energy transition is bound to happen, and this will indeed reshape the world. With this as a context, I would turn to our esteemed speakers of the day today. We have a high-profile speakers, and we would be happy to hear views of each one of you from your respective region or country or the organization or what's happening in your company. Let me invite Mr. Muhammad Faisal Azwan, Consul Trade Commissioner, Consulate General of Malaysia, Trade Section, for his views, please. Over to you, Mr. Muhammad Faisal Azwan.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sameer. The Honorable Minister, External Affairs, Government of India, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, online participants, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the Confederation of Indian Industry for inviting Matrade to be part of this wonderful virtual event today. For your information, CII have established excellent working relationship with Matrade since the establishment of Matrade offices in India, and often being invited to support CII programs and vice versa. So the topic on creating partnerships for energy security is very relevant nowadays, and it is one of the main concerns that lurks behind every country energy policy. The question to be answered is how countries in this region are dealing with energy, encouraging local businesses to embrace sustainability as well as promoting the use of RE, renewable energy. We all know that very well, RE has played a pivotal role in providing endless supply of energy sources from hydro, wind power, solar, bioenergy, and geothermal. These sources of RE are expected to make the bulk of the supply by 2050 as fossil fuels become scarcer. The need for energy is continuously increasing in Malaysia, yet the supply is not meeting the demand. Current power production and demand trends show that Malaysia has a reserve margin that will only last for a few decades. In order to meet this ever-increasing energy demand, Malaysia requires additional investment, research and development in its power sector. Furthermore, the Malaysian government's diversification policy and power sector expansion plan emphasize the need to actively promote the use of renewable energy. Over the years, companies in Malaysia have taken many initiatives to upskill and upgrade themselves by adopting the quality standards or certification for the sustainability. One of the certification include Malaysia Sustainable Palm Oil MPSO, one of the initiatives by the Malaysia Green Technology, Eco Label by CIRIM, our standards organization, Green Mark and LEED for buildings, and many others. Adopting to such standards, particularly if they are internationally recognized, they can help our exporters, basically Malaysian companies, including those in the SMEs, gain strategic advantage in the global market, which is increasingly sanitized towards sustainable agenda. For your information, Malaysia have established an important part of this growth, with electricity demand in this region is expected to grow significantly over the coming years. Malaysia alone has targeted to achieve a capacity of electrical power over 30% from 36 gigawatt in 2020 to 47 gigawatt by 2030, with most of the growth comes from solar installations. Ladies and gentlemen, under the 12th Malaysian Plan, the plan to transform Malaysia to be a carbon neutral country by 2050, with several plans have been in place, including the introduction of various economic instruments, such as carbon pricing and carbon taxation to support the plan. In addition, to achieve the 12th Malaysia Plan, Malaysia is targeting to replace coal-free power generation with gas power plant to produce cleaner electricity. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia External Trade Development Corporation is spearheading capacity buildings, promotional activities, business matching for Malaysian exporters of green technology to penetrate the global markets. For example, the Memorandum of Cooperation between our local CIMB Islamic Bank with Matrade, as well as the Malaysia Green Technology and Climate Change Center, MGTC, which was signed recently during our Halal Showcase in 2021, aim at accelerating the growth of Malaysia green exporters by nurturing SME through a series of coordinated initiatives, along with the sustainability ecosystem, in positioning Malaysia as a sustainable trading nation. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2019, Matrade became the first government agency in Malaysia to implement an awareness program to encourage Malaysian exporters to adopt the sustainability agenda in a meaningful manner. The initiative is known as Sustainable Action Value for Exporters, which is known as SAVE, which aim to engage Malaysian exporters to embrace the best practices of sustainability. It is also aligned with the initiative by the government to work towards achieving 17 Sustainable Development Goals as outlined by the United Nations Agenda 2030. Just to support the initiative, in addition, Matrade had collaborated in promoting green products and services through the International Sourcing Program at the International Green Tech and Eco Product Exhibition and Conference, Malaysia. It is basically an ideal platform for solution providers and green energy businesses to tap into the fast expanding ASEAN market by showcasing latest innovation to policy market makers, government organization, and so forth. Apart from that, we also organize INSP, which is called the International Sourcing Program, and it has created substantive attention from the players, including those from the eco-friendly products, solar panels and equipment manufacturers, even the green consultancy services. In conclusion, the Malaysian businesses, especially those who embrace sustainability, adopted sustainable practices, and involved in green-oriented exports, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic, they were found to be rebound at a faster rate as compared to the others who do not embrace sustainability practice. Thus, as a one-stop sustainability solution, which is linked to financing benefit, access to sustainability for the service provider, training and capacity building, as well as business matching by Matrade to support other Malaysian exporters and industry association are highly necessary for Malaysia to achieve sustainability in this country. With that end my speech. Thank you very much. Back to the moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad Faisal Uzan, for sharing the views. Happy to hear about the progress, what's happening in Malaysia, and of course, commitment of Malaysia as a country to be carbon neutral on or before 2050. That's indeed heartening. And I believe this power demand you spoke about in Malaysia, it appears to be increasing across Asian countries. We will listen to all the esteemed speakers, and then I will come to some questions subsequently. I'll move on to the next speaker of the day, which is Mr. Indranil Sen Gupta. He is founder and CEO of Investify Vietnam. Mr. Indranil, we will be very happy to hear your experiences as to what's happening in your organization and Vietnam as a country. Over to you, Mr. Sen Gupta.
Thank you, Mr. Sameer Gupta, and all my co-panelists. If we see the energy basket of any country, it will be either a mix of fossil fuel or hydro, solar, wind, nuclear, waste to energy. But all countries cannot follow the entire basket, depending on whatever natural resources are there. Country would choose their optimum energy basket. So that way, India is quite uniquely placed, where we have all the forms of energy, both as, we have the resources as well as the technology. We have some great OEM suppliers, we have EPC, and we have O&M, and we are good investors also. Now, that's India. I'll come back to India and I'll try to see where the gap is. Let's go to ASEAN. Well, in ASEAN, like I said, each country has followed their own way of developing their energy mix. Let's say Vietnam. Vietnam, originally when it started, its journey was very, very interesting. Majority was hydro. And one of the few countries who started their journey with hydro were like almost 80% was hydro. And then came in coal, because Vietnam has coal. And the coal basket, the coal portion in the energy basket expanded. Then came in the renewables, which is just last few years, and all forms of renewables have come in, and the energy demand has grown quite significantly. And as per the plan, by 2030 it will touch around 120 gigs. But similar to Vietnam, if you see, the other countries also have the same growth path, but again, depending. For example, there is fossil fuel in Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Myanmar, but not all countries have fossil fuel. For example, Laos started their journey with hydro and still in hydro. Cambodia did the same, but they have now also moved into renewable and coal. My point of view is that while renewable proportion in the energy basket will increase, but what will the relevancy of fossil fuel will still be there for the next couple of decades, for two reasons primarily. One is, if a country has fossil fuel, they will use it. Maybe better technologies will come in for be more environmental friendly. And the second one is the base load. We still do not have a very commercially viable solution to cover for the base load and the frequency fluctuation when the proportion of renewable increases. The batteries are still not very commercially viable. And the other problem which happens, in fact, in Vietnam, it's a problem right now, which is the transmission and the distribution line. So that's weak, and all our renewables are based in South. So now there is almost like an overcapacity of renewable energy, and it's not being able to be transmitted to the North. So these things will take some time to correct, so the relevance, like I said, the relevance of fossil fuels will be there. Now, Vietnam had a very interesting journey, as Mr. Sameer Gupta was explaining. Like many other ASEAN countries, it suddenly ramped up the renewable proportion in the energy basket. All the policies, the solar policy, or the wind policy, or the waste to energy policies are quite new. They're all like 4 or 5 years old, but the amount of capacity addition, in fact, the first regime of FIT saw almost 4 gig of capacity addition in just 2 years in a country like Vietnam. And then similar story we have seen for wind. And in the next proposed PDP, that is the Power Development Plan, interestingly, the coal has been increased. So coal had reduced in the last Power Development Plan, but the coal proportion has been increased, and that's because of this transmission problem. So it will take few years to correct the transmission problem, and hence, then again, the renewable will have a faster ramp up. Now, as a policy, also like in most developing countries, when we start the renewable journey, it is always the FIT. That's a feed-in tariff, and from feed-in tariff, you move into an auction or a DPPA, and exactly the same thing is happening in Vietnam right now, and also in Cambodia, where the feed-in tariff, the first two feed-in tariffs are over, and the next tariff, which we are waiting for right now, will be for sure for solar. It will be auction for the ground-mounted solar, and for the rooftop, it will still continue as a feed-in tariff. And for the wind also, it will be an auction, at least for the onshore ones. Offshore, maybe because it's difficult to have an option for offshore. Then there is waste to energy, which will continue as a feed-in tariff for one more regime. Now, the technologies right now which are being used are all sort of imported technology, right? Whether it's wind or solar panels or wind turbines. Now, that's the case in most of these ASEAN countries. And that's where there's a scope where India can handhold. And I'll come to that a little more specifically. The challenges, again, are the evacuation, the supply chain. That means, for example, for COVID, a lot of the wind projects got delayed because all the turbine supplies got delayed, and also a lot of foreign experts were supposed to come for installation and all. They couldn't come, so there's a delay. The target COD by which the first feed-in tariff would expire. Many investments are not being able to reach, so the government is considering to extend the feed-in tariff deadline by another 3 months. So these issues are there, and these issues are there is because of the fact that, and that's true in most of the ASEAN countries, that there is no in-house or within the country manufacturing facilities or technological expertise, and also, of course, investments. Now, here where I believe where there is a lot of synergy and congruency between India and ASEAN. Now, if you see India, we have some of the best OEMs in India, and we have in both. I mean, whether it's fossil fuel, whether it's a company like other Mr. Gupta's company, like or even we have BHL, we have in the private sector also, we have various renewable OEM manufacturers. So, and we have good investment, we have good O&M capabilities, everything. So, but why we don't see Indian equipments or Indian EPCs or Indian investments to the extent which should have been in ASEAN countries? We have investment in mining and all, but we don't see really OEMs. We don't see BHL here. We don't see Mr. Sameer Gupta's company much in this part of the world. But these are all great companies. My belief, and having worked in the sector both in India and ASEAN for many years now, the problem is, while our quality are good, our prices are also very competitive. Let's say apart from the Chinese, but if we compare with the Americans, Europeans, Koreans, and Japanese, we are competitive and our qualities are pretty good. Where we are losing out is the ECA financing. So except for US, our ECA, that means the Indian ECA financing, is cumbersome and less competitive. And unlike other sectors where energy is primarily a regulated and a fixed tariff business, and therefore the cost of capital plays an important part in calculating the whole cost. since there are more attractive ECA financing packages available to the ASEAN countries, the project developers from let's say Korea, let's say Japan, China. So they avoid the Indian equipments because of not, our ECA financing packages are not competitive and complicated, the EXIM ban loans and all. So I would recommend very strongly that Government of India should do a comparative analysis with the other ECA sources and simplify these EXIM loans. I mean, this will augment the EPC and the ENP participation from Indian companies in ASEAN. I mean, while we have immense potential, we have all our global standard OEM manufacturers. So once that happens, so once there is a participation of the EPC and the ENP players from India, then we will automatically, as a next step, we'll see the Indian investors in this energy sector will be interested in participating. And that will be a logical next step. So these are primarily what I wanted to summarize. And yeah, I mean, I would look forward to hear to the other speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Sameer Gupta. And yes, of course, your point on energy mix is very interesting topic indeed. Coal and thermal, I would tend to agree, will have a role to play for coming 2 decades at least. And yes, there is a clear shift towards renewables. There is no second thought about it. I think challenges of base load or batteries or storage, what you spoke about, at least in my view, a lot of innovation across the world is happening. And hopefully there is going to be a disruption soon where cost points will come down and they're going to be economically viable solutions. I think it's going to happen faster than what we all thought 3 years back. The rate of change is pretty fast to my mind. Your inputs on synergy between India and Asian countries, Vietnam in particular, absolutely well taken. Thank you for your suggestions. And I promise you that you will see a lot of Indian companies, be it on the manufacturing side or EPC or power developers, you will see them in Vietnam soon. Thank you so much. And with this, we would move to the next speaker of the day, is Mr. Hendra Senadia, Executive Director, APBI ICMA Indonesia. Over to Mr. Hendra Senadia for your views, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. On behalf of Indonesian Coal Mining Association, I'd like to appreciate the Conference of India in Industry for inviting us to participate in this very important meeting. Okay, talking about the role of coal to energy security in the regions and in Asia, coal remain important primary energy sources. And for Indonesia itself, its account of until now it's about 98% of the Indonesians' power generation. So coal remains important, and also for the state revenue purposes. With introduction of our associations, Indonesian Coal Mining Association was founded 32 years ago. We have more than 70 coal producers as our member, which accounts of more than 75% of the Indonesian national coal productions. And we have also more than 80 members of associate members. They're comprises of traders, consultants, surveyors, and other industry that support the coal industry. We have a couple of companies from India as our member, and also from Malaysia. Yeah, TND Field is one of our members. And talking about coal again, as I mentioned earlier, that it's remain important for Indonesian security. And in Indonesian energy security, Indonesian energy mix, coal is expected to the role of coal is expected to decline and to be taken over by renewable energy. But up to now, renewable energy is only 13 to 14% of the national energy mix, which is fall short of the expected 25% by 2025. So it's a big task for renewable energy to meet the 25% of the energy of the role in energy mix by the next 4 years. So it's very challenging for the renewable energy. Indonesian coal is mostly are for exported purposes. So the role of Indonesian coal for energy security, not only to power or to secure the energy security domestically, but also for the regions. 75% of Indonesian coal are exported, and India is among Indonesian biggest export destination market after China. India is the second, and the ASEAN members, if we treat Southeast Asian country as a one market, ASEAN members accounts of roughly 21 to 22% of Indonesian coal export. India, in the 2019, Indonesian share of the total Indonesian export, around roughly 27% goes to India. Yeah. And India itself in 2019 imported of their total India imports 45% from Indonesia. So this is show how important the relation between these two countries. In 2020, the share of Indians market is slightly declined. It's around 22%. And on the India imports also from Indonesia is slightly declined, and probably because Australian coal also goes to diverted to India following the export ban from China to India to Australia products. So India and Indonesia remains a very important trading relations. And back to renewable again. In Indonesia energy policy, there is a significant shift toward the development of renewable energy, as Indonesian is also moving to aggressively increase the renewable share. And the latest issue of business strategic plan of PLN. PLN is Indonesian state-owned electricity company. The document was just issued yesterday. In this document, for the next 10 years, the share of renewable is expected to increase significantly. So in the strategic business plan of the PLN, there will be 21 gigawatt RE capacity for the next 10 years, of which 26% from hydro and about 11.5% from solar. On the other hand, the installed capacity for coal-fired power plant is declined. So in the next 10 years, only 13.8%. So there will be huge challenging for Indonesia to shift from the over-reliance of coal toward the development of renewable. But if you look at the current situation overseas, what's happening in China and UK shows that coal remains a very important energy primer to energy security. So basically, we are from Indonesian Coal Mining Association sees the potential of export coal market for at least 1 or 2 decades. Not only potential demand from India and China, but also from the Southeast Asians, which the coal-fired power plant capacity will increase. But if we look at the latest presentation from ASEAN Center for Energy, I think Dr. Venkatachatalam knows this issue much better. Yeah, there will be 28 gigawatt installed capacity in ASEAN, of which 80% from RE. Indonesia is among the lowest RE capacity compared to other member ASEANs, only 6% or something. Dr. Venkatachatalam knows better. So it's a huge challenging for Indonesia to meet the demand. Indonesia has just recently implement carbon tax. It's just very significant development of the Indonesia in order to meet the net zero emissions and net zero emission target. And Indonesia government also pushing for coal development into the syngas, yeah, to produce dimethyl ether to substitute the deficit of import LPG. So there are a lot of goings on in Indonesia. efforts to moving toward the greener energy while still maintaining the role of coal as a primary energy security. I think that's a bit my introductions of this prestigious event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hendra Senadia. I think you rightly said Indonesia has got rich reserves of coal, and India is certainly exporting from Indonesia. Share of renewable clearly is bound to increase, and this transition to renewable is a journey I think we are all embarking all across not only Asian countries but across the world, as decarbonized world is the only choice we are left with. And perhaps this carbon tax what you spoke about is one of the ways to give this a push, I guess. And I think building a climate resilient infrastructure is the only hope which we have, which can possibly protect all of us from next possible health crisis. So it's heartening so far to hear all of you, that this kind of focus is there in greening this part of the world. Thank you once again, Mr. Hendra Senadia. With that, I'll move to the next speaker of the day, Dr. Venkatachalam Anbumozi, his Director Research Strategy and Innovation, Economic Research, Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. Over to you, Dr. Venkatachalam.
Thank you, Mr. Sameer Gupta, and good evening, my fellow panelists and the participants. And it is my great pleasure to join this afternoon discussions on energy security and decarbonizing the energy sector. Today, and I would like to make 2 points. So that is what are the similarities between ASEAN and India in terms of energy supply and demand, and second thing is what are the opportunities we can harness, or what could be the low-hanging fruits, and that could come from these policy realignments. If you look into that, ASEAN is I think only formalized energy bloc. It is a amalgamation of small and 10 small and medium-sized economies with the differing structure in the economic status and the energy demand. It is similar to India in the structure. And this, when compared to ASEAN and India, and basically there are 3 narratives, and we can look into it. One is both India and ASEAN is a relatively resource-rich region, and it has the multiple sources of energy. And second thing is both are the very growing and dynamic and maybe energy thirsty countries of the region. And the third point is also these two, India and ASEAN is more vulnerable to energy supply and demand. And why I'm saying it, and if you look into the ASEAN, we are based in Jakarta, and we are a kind of observatory for the what's happening in the ASEAN and plus East Asia, ASEAN plus 16 economies, including India. We conduct nearly 40 research projects and also capacity building programs. But if you look into this ASEAN, and we have 8 of these ASEAN member countries are proven oil reserves, and Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam and Myanmar, and they are rich in these oil resources. And Pak Henry mentioned, and the coal, this region is blessed with the coal, and in Indonesia and Vietnam and some part of Thailand, and there is a substantial part of the coal that remains. And also 4% of the global gas resources are in the region, and also it is blessed with being that in the tropical area, it is blessed with the sunlight. So this solar and other biomass resources could be harnessed. And so overall, the resource availability is not a major concern if you look at a simple lens and with the availability, but the access to is becoming a difficulty. But this availability itself is a kind of interest in the other bigger economies, bigger energy demanding economies like China, where it is most of the investments are coming from the oil and the natural resource sectors. Coming to this second part, this is the energy thirsty, and here we find a lot of similarities between India and ASEAN, and most of the countries, and I think it is astonishing speed, and Indonesia has got almost 99% of energy access, and but still we lack some countries like Myanmar and Cambodia, and Myanmar it is 30% access. That itself shows the kind of a diversity, but it's also provides some kind of opportunity, being the Myanmar is the very closest neighbor to India, and the geographical proximity brings much more. How India could be a solution for bringing the affordable energy to Myanmar. And if you look at the demand side, and here at present, this per capita energy consumption is relatively low. If you combine together all these 10 economies, it comes around 0.6 megawatt hour. And but this growth rate, and some of them are moving very fast, and the lifestyle changes it happens, and also that is also related to human development, and soon it may be going to about 15 megahertz. It is very much equivalent to US or Europe standards or the Japan standards. This ultra rich community, and also this emerging middle class, this consumption pattern is completely changing. So the demand will be increasing. And then it is happening at the industry level. This region is a part of this global production network and the supply chains, and here this industrialization and the urbanization and this expanding the middle class, which will be contributing for the further increase in the electricity demand, and whether this regions has that kind of capacity, and Pak Hendra mentioned about this renewable energy targets. 21% for Indonesia has set it, but still it is struggling to meet it. And for the ASEAN level, and they set the target collectively of installed capacity by 2030, it is about 35%. And by installed capacity, by energy mix, it is 23%. But I really doubt, and because all the low-hanging fruits has been achieved, and here they need an external support, and where that is in the India can fill in, and giving its strength, and in the solar, wind, and also the biofuel programs, there is a gap to fill by the dialogue partners that include India. And the demand for the gas is also expected to increase, and this has been seen, and because why it is happening, and here because of this Paris climate commitment, also this Glasgow commitments. Now the coal, I think Hendra also mentioned, this coal may be slowing down. I think Indonesia has told official, I'm not sure whether it is official, there may be no more coal power plants in the beyond the 2050, and when they are going for the carbon neutrality. That means countries are naturally looking for a kind of transition fuel. That is where comes this oil and natural gas. So it is expected to rise, and where this Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei is going to lead, and these countries basically still holds a lot of reserves and has the supply potential. And then the biofuel, particularly palm oil in Indonesia and Malaysia, and that is one of these sources that is left, where the demand, basically when putting the standards for the decarbonization or the transport sector, then naturally this biofuel comes and fill in. And so here we find a lot of similarities, and the region has soon becoming a kind of a net importer. And there is a structural changes that is going to take place because of this Paris Climate Agreement and also carbon neutrality targets. Here there is a way for the cooperation, and countries come together, India and ASEAN countries come together. But we need to take into the fact that is ASEAN is achieving for the economic integration, build still the powers, the sovereignty and the policy making. There is no regional policy, but it is all the national policies. So India need to take into account of it. So So how we can move forward, and here that is comes, and here we have a high level political commitment, and where there is ASEAN India senior officials meeting at the energy level ministers is taking place, and India is supporting one of this stream under this task force, energy cooperation task force, biofuel stream. And also East ASEAN and post ministerial conference, it is at the highest level, it is happening up, and also this ASEAN India summit, and this APEC has all these 7 priority areas, and starting from this APG and the energy efficiency is also now had with the increased target, it has been set at 21%. And then we have this clean coal policies, and also renewable energy. These all areas except one, that is a nuclear power. I think where this is India and ASEAN cooperation has a lot of potential. But it has to be changed. Some of the policy landscapes need to be changed. And I have been discussing with several private investors in this region, and we did a survey, and we asked them what barred them from going to Indian markets. And most of them, they find there are two barriers exist. One is there is no single window. And if you come to this region, for example, Malaysia and Singapore Energy Market Authority, and the Brunei, and they have a one single window or the one single institution that taken care of all these energy matters. So that set the regulations and also that investment policies. When going to India, it has the multiple windows, and so it has to be think about it and how we can streamline our standards and also investment policies. Second thing is this oil and gas, and leaving aside the coal. Coal, as Pak Indra mentioned, coal will remain a dominant force for the medium and short and medium term. And but at the same time, the profile of oil and gas is coming in. And some countries doesn't have that kind of, they have the resources, but not the refinery facilities. And here maybe India can help for countries like Vietnam, we are building this no refinery facilities. From the policy point of view, and there is a lot of discussion, and this India still an observer on the RCEP, and here RCEP has created a lot of positive incentives for the dialogue partners or the trade partners to move in. And here, if RCEP is not possible, and what type of bilateral agreements that could be done in the energy sector, and that trade and the energy ministers in India need to come together and find a convergence. And the third point of the future, when we talk about when this COVID happened, and also this industry 4.0 or the digitalization technologies are coming into the region, and some companies and some utilities are moving very fast, and for including this Hapua and these utility companies, mostly state-owned enterprises, are moving into this digitalization. And here with application of this IT and the CT technologies, and here India has a kind of a comparative advantage, and so this will help. And basically the trade liberalization of the service sector is also moving on, and this is one area that is where India's skills could match the demands, that is new demands that is coming from the ASEAN countries. My last point here is this energy subsidies, and which is basically a hurdle in both the countries, and India and Indonesia, that basically defer the investment and on the bilateral investments, or it is a multilateral investments. And as countries in this region are thinking about whether going for the carbon tax or the ETS, and now Thailand is looking at the ETS, and Singapore has already introduced the carbon pricing mechanism. So and here the countries are going to seriously think about it, and also India also need to think that is how we can streamline this subsidy regimes and prepare for this new carbon pricing mechanisms. So these are the some 5 areas that is we need to think, and here we need a kind of a much more public-private partnership and more dialogues. And For example, and India is implementing 2 studies, and the reports are available in our website. One is thanks to the CII, and we are closely cooperating with the CII. One is how this northeastern states, 7 states, could be a kind of a gateway for much more energy cooperation with this ASEAN, and particularly the start with the northeast region and also Myanmar. And second one is we are looking into what are the feasibility and also the barriers for developing a kind of a regional value chain in the solar sector, where there is India and ASEAN could be diverted, and it could be a kind of a new production base for the rest of the region. So I stop here, and I will come back to you for further question and answer. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Sameer.
Thank you, Dr. Venkatachalam. Thank you for sharing your views and making us a lot more wiser. I think your point on similarities between India and ASEAN countries is a very interesting point that you have brought up. All across the Asian region, I think you're right in saying that they are all fast growing, they are energy thirsty, and they're all energetic countries. And I agree that there are low hanging fruits in terms of opportunities in areas of solar, biomass, etc. And no doubt, affordable energy is going to be the key. I would only like to highlight once again that Government of India has already set up a facilitation board to provide one-stop assistance to all investors. And likewise, a lot of work is happening in this country in terms of ease of doing business all across the country, all across the states. I would also like to say that we at India are committed to and we are very keen to work together and in a very collaborative manner with all the ASEAN countries. Certainly, we need to increase the bilateral trade and, of course, unleash the potential of this ASEAN region. Thank you once again. And with this, I will move to the next speaker. He's Mr. Sameer Yamdagini, CEO and Chairman, PSS Group, Thailand. Over to you, Mr. Sameer Yamdagini.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to have all of you on this particular discussion topic of energy. We do have a lot of things going on in Thailand. Thailand has been looking at the alternative energy in a phase much earlier than most of the countries in Southeast Asia, with currently operating 3 gigawatts of solar power that they have right now. And there are, like Vietnam, other countries who have actually grown ahead. But let me go back specifically to the topic. I mean, as a part of the ASEAN Energy Summit that was there, the ASEAN APEC, I think we had many streams. Firstly was on the power grid side, and then we had the pipeline. So let me just cover these two quickly with the Thailand perspective. As far as the power grid is concerned, I mean, Thailand already has a connection with Laos, and they're expanding it in Malaysia. So I think they're expanding to another 300 megawatts line into Malaysia, and they're going to be doing that as well. As far as the gas pipeline is concerned, there is already a reasonably good grid going on between Malaysia and Thailand and Myanmar, and now with LNG, Thailand is really expanding on the LNG side and looking at expanding into being a hub for LNG in this region and using these pipelines for that particular matter. As far as coal is concerned, I think the consumption of coal and expanding the facilities with coal has substantially been reduced as far as Thailand is concerned. And they've been moving more in terms of a BCG economy, which I'll talk a little later on. In terms of the renewable side, there was a big push that happened earlier, and many schemes have gone through, and things have moved slightly. I'll explain on numbers and things like that in a better way. The government is pushing ahead on energy efficiency and conservation in many regards. I think that program can be more robust, but it is going on, and there are actually programs related to my industry, which is essentially solar, where they have done good programs over there. But with that, let me go back and talk a little bit more on what is the plan as far as Thailand is concerned. I mean, Thailand today does about 50 gigawatts of power. It's not in context of India, it's not such a big number, but yes, it's for a 70 million people in Thailand, it's actually reasonably a decent number with a planned expansion of almost 77 gigawatts going into the next 20 years. With the existing capacity that they have of 46 gigawatts, which is basically gas and coal-based assets. In these, currently the government is in the plan of retiring almost 21 gigawatts of that. So out of the 46, they're actually retiring 21 gigawatts of that. And therefore, moving forward in the next 20 years, we're basically talking of an additional capacity of 57 gigawatts in Thailand. And they've dedicated 25 gigawatts of that 27 to be essentially around the renewable energy. Currently, they've identified a few streams where they feel assets will be made. I think renewable energy, they have looked into a concept which is known as the BCG. Now, BCG per se started with the UN sustainability goals, where they were really looking at how countries can accelerate growth by sustainability. And Thailand has adopted that as a growth model, wherein in the BCD model, they're really going for the bioeconomy and the circular economy. And in this model, they're actually looking at biomass and biogas to be a phase of expansion. So as it stands right now, the government has just approved about 150 megawatts of PPAs with regards to this particular area. And they expect to have more based on the performance that happens out of this particular model. They're looking at almost 8.7 gigawatts of solar coming into Thailand, 2.8 of biomass, and they've got a separate category of floating solar, which is around 2.8 gigawatts, and community-based biomass and biogas, which you just spoke about, is basically involving agricultural cooperatives to produce certain type of crops, which are going to be used in the biogas and also in the biomass plants, and that's 2.4 gigawatts. So the Thai government is really looking at pushing this and trying to ensure that they achieve a 30% in terms of the total consumption or the total energy production that is happening out of the alternate energy per se. Things are also changing quite a bit in that particular segment, because Thailand is now having a lot of focus going on in terms of rooftops and rooftop solars. But now they are also thinking of moving into being able to do distributed solar and wheeling sort of arrangements and things like that. That will only expedite the conversion or the transition from traditional sources of power to green energy. So Thailand does look to be promising. I mean, they have always embraced sustainability as a way of living, and I think towards the green model, they're actually pushing it more every year to make it better. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sameer Yamdagini, for sharing your views. I think Thailand is indeed blessed to have availability of gas. You spoke about enhanced focus on energy efficiency and energy conservation. I believe this is one area where both the countries can work a lot more closely. India indeed has done a lot in this area over last few years, and we can share our experiences of how we implemented this in this country. Focus of Thailand on BCG, which is biocircular and gas economy, is again a very interesting concept, to say the least. I think as ASEAN as a region, we should kind of study this model of Thailand as to what all they have done to actually implement it on the ground. There could be huge learnings from this, what has been done in Thailand. Thank you once again. And with this, I will move to the next speaker, Mr. Narendra M. Gupta. His CGM International NTPC. Over to you, Mr. Narendra Gupta.
Thank you, Mr. Sameer Gupta, and good afternoon, my fellow panelists and guests, distinguished delegates, colleagues, ladies, gentlemen. Please accept my cordial greetings. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to CII for providing NTPC with an opportunity to share our perspective on how India, along with ASEAN region, can create partnership for energy security. There is an undeniable urgency among world's leaders and countries today to chart out strategies aimed at meeting the challenge posted by climate change, and the topic of the today is in consonance with the same. In recent times, we have witnessed erratic weather patterns all across, and there is a global consensus to move beyond mere greenwashing and come up with concrete targets towards reducing the global warming. Energy security means different things to different people, different countries. Producer and exporter countries aim to ensure reliable demand for their commodities, while countries dependent on imports for their energy needs to diversify their sources of supply to minimize over-dependence on one source. In today's context, however, energy security has assumed additional connotations, given the tectonic shift taking place in the choice of primary fuel owing to environmental concerns. Countries and companies alike world over are coming up with ambitious targets or becoming fossil fuel free within some predetermined timelines. At NTPC, we are a 67 gigawatt company with nearly 80% coal-based capacity. We have also decided not to set up any more coal-fired power plants and intend to become a predominantly a renewable-based company by 2032, when we'll be 130 gigawatt company. And in this regard, last year, in fact, we completed 1 year yesterday. We set up NTPC RE Limited, a 100% owned subsidiary, which will be looking after this RE portfolio. In the current scenario, renewable energy is being touted to take over from the fossil fuel-based energy sources, but given the intermittent and non-dispatchable nature of the same, the moot question remains whether adoption of solar and wind would also address the energy security issue. In the current state, I don't believe it. And in fact, many of the speakers have said before me, and it doesn't until and unless combined with some sort of storage element. Talking of an energy storage, BSS now in the market are primarily intended to address intermittency and generation variability in the RE space, but they are quite expensive. To address the issue of intermittency, we in India have attempted to move away from utility scale RE projects and towards round the clock RTC solutions that include solar, wind, and hydro. Surely storage will be included in these utility scale solutions, allowing the power supply from such generators to be scheduled. I see a strong potential for RTC type of solution in ASEAN region, given the abundant hydro potential in the region when combined with the variable energy, renewable energy. Many countries in the region are endowed with excellent irradiation levels, along with long coastlines which can be tapped for solar and wind energy respectively. The huge RE potential, including hydro in the region, makes a strong case for integration of the power system in the region. Such grid integration in the region can certainly play a defining role in the region, meeting the twin objective of catering to the power demand and taming the environmental concerns at the same time. However, the success of the grid integration will not depend on laying infrastructure only, but on navigating the operational challenge and power trading among many countries. NTPC has long experience of working with grid operators in India and South region, where we are involved in power trade through our subsidiary, that is NVVN, NTPC Vidyut Vyapar Nigam. NTPC has expertise in initiating and trading electricity across borders with its neighboring countries such as Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar. And we along with our sister concerns, which are involved in grid infrastructure and operations, can cooperate with the region to lay out similar infrastructures and mechanisms. However, having talked about the importance of an integrated grid, we also understand that ASEAN regions consist of island countries and archipelagos, and connecting them to grid may not be a techno-economical solution. In such a case, a decentralized mode of power generation connected with microgrid and fed by renewables sources appears to be a natural option. However, due to inherent fluctuation and non-dispatchable nature of the power generated, it has its own limitations. On the technology front, there are other storage solutions in the pipeline apart from BESS, which may prove to be consequential in tackling the problem of RE variability, especially in places which are difficult to serve through grid. Standalone fuel cell based backup power system and microgrid system with hydrogen production using electrolyzer are two solutions, which we are working on through pilot projects. These two solutions can be used together, which can help solve the twin problem of energy equity and security in the future. Further, the availability of water bodies in islands and archipelagos makes them a fit case for development of floating solar power plants. One of the speakers earlier also has spoken on this. NTPC's success story of developing 390 megawatt of floating solar PV projects can be quickly replicated in the region. I would like to inform you that we are already having India's largest floating solar of 25 megawatt in Simadri, and we are on the course to commission 100 megawatt floating solar, that is 140 peak at Ramagundam, which will be India's biggest at that time. While discussing about this plant, I'm also reminded of the 10 TPD green hydrogen plant we are going to set up in Ramagundam. There, the hydrogen will be produced using the green energy produced from this 100 megawatt of floating solar power plant. Further, we'll be using the hydrogen produced there to produce methanol by mixing it with carbon dioxide emitted from our coal-fired power plant in Ramagundam. Similar methanol plant using carbon dioxide from coal plant is also being erected in our Vindhyachal power station. Apart from above, we are also actively working on firing biomass in our thermal power plants. And now we have a mandate of 7% biomass co-firing at 17 of our coal-based power plants, which will lead to avoiding 1.28 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. As I can see, NTPC has aligned its energy transition goals with India's priorities and NDCs. Going forward, we plan to transition ourselves from being a thermal power company to majorly becoming a RE-based company. We aim to achieve 60 gigawatt of cumulative capacity of renewables by 2032. At the United Nations High-Level Dialogue on Energy 2021, we just declared this as part of NTPC's Energy Compact targets. This is in line with 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement. In this sense, we are undoubtedly working on the same at corporate level. I understand that countries in ASEAN region have huge thermal power capacities, and looking at the overall energy needs of ASEAN in next 20 years, it is clear that coal and natural gas may continue to play a key role in ASEAN's energy mix, as is reflected in APEC document 2. We can surely collaborate towards greening those existing thermal stations by way of working on technologies such as carbon capture utilization and green methanol production, as I have already informed earlier. Given the similar times that we live in, particularly for power sector, we also need to seriously look at another energy alternatives such as green hydrogen, offshore wind, nuclear energy, as they can provide a stable and concentrated power source and can easily replace fossil fuel power plants, leading to net zero emission targets. These are other areas where we would like to cooperate. At this stage, I would like to share that our path to net zero includes huge RE capacity addition with diversification into other clean technologies. Reducing group net energy intensity by 10% versus 2012 level is another major goal for NTPC. We are working on developing e-mobility, waste to energy, green hydrogen, and biofuel, to just name a few. All our business activities will be guided by a motto of going green in a sustainable way. At the same time, we are venturing into new frontiers internationally and are willing to collaborate with prospective players in its focus regions at mutually acceptable terms. NTPC invites the competent players to participate in its ongoing projects in domestic markets and looking forward to sharing its experience, expertise, and knowledge base for consulting and project opportunities in various ASEAN countries. We are also associated with International Solar Alliance as its corporate partner. By partnering with ISA, we are helping other nations such as Togo, Mali, Malawi, Cuba, and Niger through development of around 1,835 megawatt solar power parks. In coming years, we intend to help develop around 5,000 megawatt solar portfolio under the aegis of ISA in ISA member countries. We are also working on providing community-centered solarization solutions to 47 SIDS and LDC countries of ISA. These solutions, which are environmentally friendly and sustainable, are also helping countries to meet their various SDG goals. Some worth mentioning solutions being developed are solar pumps for irrigation, potable water, solar water cold storages, and primary health centers. We are actively looking forward to opportunities abroad, both as a developer and a consultant across the value chain of power sector. We are also in the constant lookout for partners across overseas geography to form an association for project implementation. And I'm pleased to share that recently we have signed MOUs with big companies like NHPC and EDF France to work jointly in areas of hydro and solar and hydrogen areas. We may also focus on areas such as consultancy services and development of renewable energy projects, promotion implementation of clean energy technologies. This is in line with APEC targets, and NTPC has a vast experience of the said area of power generation. Promotion of energy efficiency and conservation measures through institutional capacity building may be another area where NTPC can provide services, as we have undertaken various practices for improved energy efficiency in our power plants and have our own targets set for efficiency improvement. NTPC and ASEAN countries can collectively join forces to conduct joint research and development programs in the areas of power generation, such as green hydrogen, green methanol, etc., so as to reduce the timeline of dependency on coal and natural gas. India has been investing in ASEAN region for development of energy infrastructure, but it is limited to CLMV countries. Most of the projects have been mobilized through development cooperation and construction of facilities such as power transmission in the oil and gas sector. There are many challenges that we have faced while exploring power project opportunities in the ASEAN region, namely the bankability issue of the projects, regulatory and infrastructural issues. However, these issues may be tackled effectively through political intervention, suitable regulatory framework additions. Standard project templates with suitable guarantee provisions targeted at de-risking the projects with MDBs and other financial institutions, in my opinion, might go a long way towards sending a favorable signal to potential developers, while other issues may be tackled by suitable policy negotiation in ASEAN countries on country level or regional level. And India and NTPC could assist in discussions and deliberations on the same. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sameer Gupta. I think you have brought in quite a few interesting points, be it linkage of energy security with storage or round-the-clock power or microgrids or replicating floating solar in Asian region, green hydrogen. I think you have covered a lot. And it's really heartening to see commitment of NTPC to India's Paris Accord on climate change agreement and to be net zero. And of course, I would say heartening to see the keenness of NTPC to partner with Asian countries in this sector. Thank you once again for your inputs, Mr. Gupta. With this, I will move to the next speaker, Mr. Tejpreet Singh Chopra, Founder and Chief Executive Officer, Bharat Light and Power. Over to you, Mr. Tejpreet.
Great. Thanks so much, Sameer, and thanks so much, CII, for having me on this session. And it's wonderful to hear the commitment that everybody on this panel and the countries they represent on their commitment to sustainability in terms of what's happening. And it's good to hear Mr. Gupta's views in terms of how NTPC is revolutionizing the whole energy sector in our country. I'm just going to keep my points brief, given the fact that we don't have too much time today before the end of the session. So let me just make 4 or 5 key points. The first point I want to just stress is the fact that what I'm really excited to see is that the problem is not just an India problem, it's a global problem on climate change and pollution, etc. And therefore, it's fantastic to see the whole world coming together to achieve the target of 2 degrees. And we would need close to about 450 tons of carbon dioxide emission reduction to get to that level. So we've got a long way to go. I think in order for us to really move the needle in terms of energy security across the entire ASEAN region and all across the world, I think there are 3 or 4 critical factors that have to come together. The first one is technology. So far, all of us, I think the wind and solar revolution has actually left the station. At Bharat Light and Power, we are a power generation company. We build, own, and operate wind and solar farms. But I think now the game is beyond that. I think it's fantastic to see the leadership role NTPC is taking, because I think technology is going to be a critical role, whether it's in storage, whether it's in hydrogen, whether it's in EV. So in other words, it's going to take a combined effort on transportation, in industries, in manufacturing, to really achieve the target goals with regards to energy security. The other point in terms of the application of technology that we are also seeing is increasing digitization and AI into the world of energy as well. We at BLP have another separate group called Industry.ai, where what we are doing is actually digitizing wind farms, solar farms all over the world. We install our sensors into wind turbines. We extract thousands of data points every second from these turbines, whether they are in France, Germany, Spain, Italy, the United States, getting all that data onto our platform and using algorithms to increase machine availability on wind and solar farms. And therefore, like that, we need to think out of the box in terms of the application of technology to take it to the next level. The second one is regulation. I think it's fantastic to see in all our nations the push that the governments are making in terms of setting the targets, the vision, and the regulatory framework to ensure that we can attract the right capital to actually make all this transition happen. The third one is capital and financing. I think that's a critical role across our entire region. This whole revolution in terms of energy security is going to be driven by our ability to constantly attract global capital at the right price in order to make this transition happen. And I think, like, if I remember, I think what Mr. Indranilid made a point is the fact that at India, we've been fortunate to be able to attract a lot of this capital, whether it's from pension funds, sovereign wealth funds. I think one of the challenges we're going to have now going forward is, with all this capital coming in, are we going to get the right returns to continue to make this entire sector sustainable, to continue to attract capital? The fourth one is around partnerships. And I think partnerships are going to be critical across our entire region. I think we've got a lot to learn from each other. But I think India has shown, given the fact that I came from my background, I used to be at GE for most of my career, given the fact that India is becoming a large manufacturing hub for technology, we can actually share quite attractively priced OEMs that are making good wind turbines, solar panels, etc. And we can create an ecosystem of partners to share technology across our region. The fifth point is there are other technologies that we should talk a little bit about: biomass, EV, charging infrastructure. I think those are sectors that don't, biomass is one, for example, doesn't get talked about enough, I feel. And therefore, I really feel that we should make a genuine push in adopting waste to energy technologies as we adopt energy security across our region. The next point is energy efficiency. What we are seeing across industries and buildings is the fact that so far we've been focusing more on the generation side. But I just feel over the next 10 years, there's going to be a huge focus on the energy efficiency side. Let me share two examples. In one of our companies, Industry.ai, like I said, what we're doing is connecting buildings, factories. We connect all the parameters of a building: water, air, gas, electricity, steam, ETP, STP, fire safety, security. We put sensors across all these buildings and factories, get all the data out, and use AI algorithms to drive energy efficiency. Let me give you one or two examples of the kind of benefits that people get. Chemical factories, 65% of our chemical factories' energy consumption comes from chillers and HVACs. And therefore, what we are able to see is 5 to 10, in some cases 15% energy savings in terms of chillers in these chemical factories around the country. 2, cement factories. A bag of cement on average in India costs about 340 rupees. 45% of that cost of cement is energy cost, 20% is logistics cost. So if we can use things like AI to drive even a few percent of energy savings in the energy composition, it results in significant savings in sustainability across our industries. So let me just finish by making 3 quick points. 1, we need to go beyond wind and solar right now. It's about a holistic approach, whether it's EV, storage, transportation, energy efficiency. We need to look at the entire bucket. 2, I think there's a lot we can learn from each other, whether it's in financing, technology, low-cost implementation of projects, financial engineering, building scale. I think there's a lot that we can do with each other. And lastly, I really truly believe that this entire revolution, being a global challenge, is going to require a bunch of partnerships. If one country has more gas and we have less gas, let's find ways to work together to ensure that we create a sustainable future. So once again, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chopra. Thank you for sharing your views and importance of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. I think focus of your company on technology and innovation in energy sector to achieve global climate change objective is certainly admirable. Thank you once again. And with this, I will move to the last speaker, Mr. Sharat Somani. He's partner and head infrastructure advisory, Asia Pac head of infrastructure, KPMG in Singapore. Over to you, Mr. Somani.
All right. Good afternoon, all, and thank you, Sameer, for that opportunity. Thank you, CII, for inviting me to speak on this forum. And a lot of eminent speakers have spoken before me. And like Tejpreet, I'll probably also limit my speech to only 5 to 7 minutes, given the time constraint. What I would do, Sameer, if that's okay, I will touch upon the 5 big themes that I see in the region. And then if time permitting, we can take a couple of questions as well. So as you know, ASEAN is a region of around 660 million people, $3.1 billion economy. Roughly, I would say in terms of population, half of India. So what happened in India over the last 2 decades, we see happening in this region in the next decade or two. And why I say so, I'll just list 5 themes and then we can see where the collaboration can happen in terms of creating partnership opportunities for Indian power companies coming into ASEAN and vice versa. The first big theme we see is rapid growth in renewable energy in the region. As highlighted by a few speakers before me, ASEAN is well on track to create close to 35% of the installed capacity in renewable energy. We have seen substantial growth in renewable energy in Vietnam, as was highlighted earlier. We have close to 15 gigawatts of renewable energy created, particularly solar in Vietnam alone in the last 2 years. The most recent Indonesian master plan by PLN envisages 10 gigawatt of renewable energy to be created, more than half of which will be solar energy over the next 10 years. So I think most of the countries are well set to meet the renewable energy targets as they've committed in the coming years. Singapore itself, although a small city state, has a renewable energy target of 3 gigawatts by 2030. So there's a substantial renewable energy push happening. One of the key things which we need to keep in mind is, as was highlighted earlier, because of the archipelago nature of some of the countries in the region, like Philippines and Indonesia, there's a lot of off-grid power which needs to be created, and distributed generation is becoming very, very critical. And a program to convert the diesel-based generation to hybrid generation is a big opportunity to get people more clean and green power and cheaper power. So that's the first theme. The second thing I wanted to touch upon is the energy transition itself. There's a substantial focus on how to cut down the coal producing power projects in the region. There's a program which Asian Development Bank has recently launched, and KPMG is advisor on that, where countries like Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia, we will see how we can take over the coal-fired projects and reduce the economic life so that we can curtail the carbon emission from these projects. So instead of those projects running for next 20, 25 years, if we can buy that out, which are cheaper cost of capital, we can actually reduce the tenure of those power plants to 10, 12 years instead of 20 to 25 years. But what we do in that is we repurpose those plants. We experiment with technologies like carbon capture and storage. And we also see possibilities of converting some of those plants after decommissioning into renewable capacities. So energy transition as a big program is expected to happen in the next 5 years. And I do expect a fair bit of opportunities for countries and companies in the region to benefit and participate in that program. So that's the second big theme. The third theme we are looking at is a focus on corporate PPAs. You know, there's a lot of technology companies, RE100 companies, who are wanting to procure power directly from renewable energy supply sources. We have seen a number of platforms being created in the region. A number of platforms are now based out of Singapore, servicing Southeast Asia. We know the great success that has happened in India in terms of corporate CNI PPAs, and we believe that that will be an important part complementing the growth of utility scale solar projects by having those corporate PPAs directly entering into with blue chip companies in the region. And this is something which will give to a lot of opportunities for platform plays for renewable energy. So that's the third big theme. The fourth theme, and it was touched upon, is grid strengthening and battery storage or storage solutions. Now we are seeing a number of opportunities, and we were involved with PLN recently in actually helping them procure renewable energy and battery storage solutions on a utility scale. Vietnam, as we said, a lot of capacity has been created, and this has led to problems in the grid, which will require a lot of strengthening and potentially experimenting with strengthening solutions, grid strengthening solutions, as well as storage solutions. The other related aspect to that is the cross-border import. We are already talking of the ASEAN Economic Community having a regional electricity grid. Now, it might take a few years for that to happen, but inter-country transfer of power and strengthening of the grid infrastructure is very critical. Singapore is already experimenting with importing 100 megawatt of power to start with from Malaysia, and there are various projects being planned between Indonesia and Singapore. We're looking at Cambodia, Laos, and to Singapore. So those are the kind of opportunities where strengthening of grid can act a very important source of creating the regional grid. And the final point, which I think India has very strong advantage, is the privatization, restructuring, and modernization of the utilities. So we are working with a number of utilities in Brunei, in Indonesia, and Vietnam on how to digitize the utility. The modernization, digitization, and digital transformation of utilities is very, very critical to prepare them for the future. And this is something where, with smart technology and resilience requirement of utilities and ability of AI and IoT, as Mr. Chopra highlighted, will actually be very, very critical for utilities to actually optimize the load management, have smart meters, smart grids to ensure that the load requirements can be effectively managed through a supply of power from different sources will be critical. So finally, to conclude, I think there are three big messages. I think there are a number of good opportunities in renewable energy, both utility scale and corporate PPAs. The second big theme is we have to complement renewable energy with battery storage solutions and grid strengthening. And finally, I think we have to help prepare the utilities for the future by having the strong digital transformation incorporated. So with that, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Samani. I think what you spoke about, importance of distributed energy and moving towards diesel abatement strategies by focusing on hybrid, is a pretty valid point. I think all the points are very well covered. I will leave all the panelists with just one thought, and that is subject of skilling in this sector, which is also going to be of equal importance. We can talk endlessly about this. This is one important topic, interesting topic. We can spend a lot more hours. In interest of time, I have no other option but to close for the day today. And once again, I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing your very rich experiences with us. And I think all of us have become a lot more wiser today. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rati. Thank you, Sameer.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all our speakers for joining us today. It was great listening to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.